Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and I am here with the Nerdarchy crew.
I'm Ted.
And I'm Dave.
And our concept today is we're going to be talking about two very special role-playing games, really close to Scott Garibay's heart. Earthdawn, all right? And this is a special version that was only sold at Gen Con many, many years ago. And then this is 5th edition Shadowrun. Now, why are we talking about Earthdawn and Shadowrun?
Before we delve into those, you guys can drop down into the description and sign up for Nerdarchy, the newsletter, where you can get weekly tips, tricks delivered to your inbox, as well as learn how to game with Nerdarchy.
Exactly. And so I'm going to explain why Earthdawn and Shadowrun are linked. They're linked in a very special way that really has been done in very few other games, if any other games at all. So Earthdawn is a straight fantasy game. It has everything you would expect. It has elves, dwarves, humans, right? In addition to that, it has T-Scrang. T-Scrang are a lizard race, which is really cool. And it has Obsidimen. Obsidimen are made of obsidian.
You know, on your cinnamon buns and
So Obsidimen are men made out of obsidian, right? And so these races are very special to Earthdawn, and so Earthdawn is unique. So Earthdawn is saying, hey, here's this fantasy world, but Shadowrun takes place in Seattle in the year 2070, and it is our world. Earthdawn takes place on Earth. It's Earth thousands of years ago, and when magic was alive on the Earth. Then in the Earthdawn Shadowrun world, it's a continuum. So there's Earthdawn, this fantasy-based world, right? Then there's the interim, which is our world, and then in the year 1995, I believe in the original Shadowrun game, this was brilliant. There's a wave of magic that returns to the world, and goblinization occurs. Goblinization is when people hit puberty. Their DNA reacts, and in the Shadowrun world, they become elves, dwarves, trolls, and the way that happens is these people literally goblinize. They become these fantasy races, and dragons return to the world. And so Shadowrun is Seattle 2070, an entire world, a modern world with drones, computers, with fast motorcycles. At the same time, you have elves, dwarves. So, like, elves have allied with Native Americans, and the dwarves have allied with Tirtan Gear and the Irish people, and they make beer with them. And so, one thing that's really awesome is you have this game.
I'll tell you one thing that's really awesome.
Thank you. You go ahead.
Let's see. I don't know if you guys can see that or not, but inside here, there's these cool hand drawing, as well as signatures.
Yeah.
And they all say Gen Con 94 on them.
Yeah, exactly. So
and I'm a little jealous of the inside cover here.
Thank you very much. I met the artists and the writers for this, and you're exactly right. This is a special edition. It was only available at Gen Con in 1994. I was really so fortunate to be there, and it was really exciting to get this book, and Earthdawn is a special game to me, and I've run Earthdawn, and I've run Shadowrun, and I've run player characters that were in this game who are resurrected in the minds of Shadowrun characters.
Nice.
So the thing that's really cool about this is these are really special games. So there's no other game that's had a continuum from a fantasy game to a science fiction game. And so this is really special. And so my question to Dave and to Ted is, what does this look like in the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition world? So first question is, what would kill magic in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition? Is there an event? Is there something that would occur that would mean the death of magic, and magic would begin to die in that world?
We talked briefly about this off camera, and I think Scott agrees with me, and that's totally just the death of the last dragon. I think if there's anything that could be cataclysmic enough to the magic of a world, heck, it's in the flippin' title, Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
You kill the dragons, the magic goes away.
I have one more idea that I think would kill.
Well, let's see what Dave's got to say.
I'm not sure yet, because I've done different things, but I've never sucked the magic out of a world.
Out of an entire world. You're exactly right. And most games haven't. That's why Earthdawn and Shadowrun being connected are special.
Typically, you either have fantasy or you have sci-fi.
I'm seeing a little Thunder the Barbarian action going on. You remember the opening scene when the atmosphere like gets sucked away from the earth?
Yeah.
When the comet goes by?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, I could see something maybe like that where, where this celestial occurrence
celestial
happens.
event. Yeah,
That
absolutely.
actually pulls all the magic out of the world and takes it with it. And what would be interesting with that is not only the fact that you've taken the magic from the world, but it's been taken by something. So what happens to the something that's absorbed all that
that's
magic?
a great idea.
And
So-
maybe they're maybe that thing, that object, whether it's an asteroid, meteor, or some kind of legendary artifact that's traveling through the multiverses, sucking away magic. What's it doing with it?
Yeah,
what's
that's a-
what's
So,
that place look like?
I have another possible idea. You have, a long-lived race, whatever exists, for the world, probably an elf. Something happened that, caused his family to die, and it all happened because of magic. So he spends his hundreds of years studying to become a foremost wizard on the world. He seeks out all these legendary objects, and he performs some kind of legendary ritual to just abolish magic for, however long.
Yeah.
So, even if it's 3,000 years, all right, poof, gone, now what happens?
Yeah,
So-
that's definitely another way where it could be triggered. One of the ideas I had, I've been tooling around with a short story in my head, and I was thinking of, because I think of these worlds that have humans, elves, and dwarves. They're, pretty iconic. They're most fantasy worlds. What if there was a war between the elves and the dwarves, and unbeknownst, one race killed the last citizen, the last denizen of the other race, where an entire race was killed? I think there'd be so much momentum behind that from a magical perspective that could kill magic on an entire.
I don't
realm.
know. Dark Sun did lots of
They
story.
murdered a lot of races.
Yeah, that's a good point. But I thought that could be another trigger. So we've talked about what it would look like if magic died on the 5th edition world. The interim world, that's the world we live in. Nobody wants to talk about that, right? But for the science fiction element of it, what does 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 10,000 years transpire where people are just living with no magic, but then magic returns in a wave. That's the concept of how. So magic is a wave, right? So Earthdawn is very high magic. Then there's no magic in the Earthdawn Shadowrun world, and then in the Shadowrun world, magic returns. So with magic, when magic returns, right? What does it look like in Dungeons & Dragons in the future? What does a future version of Dungeons & Dragons look like?
To an extent, I can sum this up. Star Wars. Star Wars is a form of magic with technology, and there's very few times that things are integrated. Now, clearly, Star Wars does not have wizards throwing fireballs and lightning bolts into things, but the Force, it is referred to as sorcery by some of the members of the Empire in the original trilogy.
I also have another take on the coming back of magic. There is an interesting parallel fiction that I read with Sir Richard Burton as the main character, and Swinburne, the poet Swinburne, is actually like his sidekick. And it starts off normal Victorian style, and it introduces all these like steampunk and also psychic things into the world. And the way it happens is the very first book, if you haven't read it, this will be a spoiler, Spring Hill Jack appears. Well, the Spring Hill Jack is actually a time traveler, and he uses these special black diamonds. Well, in his time world, there's only 3 in existence, right? Well, what happens, because all of this time traveling shenanigans happens, more and more of them end up in the same places, and every time this happens, it creates a divergent world. But the more of these black crystal diamonds that appear, they cause more psychics to awaken, because they're actually attuned to brain waves.
Oh, wow.
And so, so there's all these different storylines that happen where some of the characters are actually psionic or psychically active. So, which is very much like magic, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But it was a very scientific way of how it happened. It was just this one event that happened. And like this character comes back and he wants to right a wrong that happened in history to his family, and he end up inadvertently causes the death of his ancestor, driving him crazy because of the paradox.
Yeah.
So then he's like, well, I have to actually impregnate someone from that time period in order to make sure my line can continue on so that I will exist, right?
Yeah.
And from it, like all these weird things like happening in this whole series, and like there's like the steampunk divergent. There's this the New Genesis version where, like in one of the versions, Ireland has this New Genesis come up with these plants to help with the famine of Ireland.
Oh wow!
But instead it overruns the continent of Ireland with carnivorous plants. I mean, not continent, island of Ireland, with carnivorous plants, and it's uninhabitable. And they talk about the refugees from Ireland being like displaced all over the world.
Wow!
And there's like all these different cool things, and it's so cool because like Darwin and Babbage and all these different real life characters are used throughout his.
So what's the name of the series again?
It's Sir Richard Burton and Swinburne is the main characters, and it's also on all the titles.
Oh, that's awesome!
Mark Hoder.
Mark Hoder
is the author. You could be able to find him easily, and he's got like six different books.
Fantastic.
So
yeah.
I know it's a little bit off topic, but it's just how they introduced the idea of a magical power through technology.
And magic being seen in different times.
Yes.
Right, exactly. And that's exactly what we're talking about. Is this is a science fiction book with strong magic. There are dragons in Shadowrun, there are elves in Shadowrun, and there are dwarves in Shadowrun. So I think my concept of a future Dungeons and Dragons is, and I'm incredibly excited about the idea of it, and I would love to see an official Dungeons and Dragons Shadowrun. Essentially, what does if magic were to die, what does it?
Modern fantasy.
Yeah. So what I would say the really cool part of that would be each of the races, humans, elves, dwarves, have their own planets, and so I think that would be really exciting. Is you could go to the dwarven planet, and the dwarven planet is what dwarves would do if they had their entire ecology, if they owned everything, if they owned the politics, if they owned the physical manifestations of the world itself. What do dwarven spaceships...
And they had futuristic technology.
Exactly. Yeah. What do dwarven spaceships look like? And then elven. So elven's, I think an elven world would be nothing but, beautiful, lush, forests and pristine water, and all the animals would be perfectly cared for. And then all the technology parts...
For the elves, I would definitely steal from Wild Cards.
Yeah.
And in Wild Cards, they have this alien race, and they actually grow their ships.
Right, and that's what I was saying.
Creatures.
Yeah, and their spaceships would be made out of wood, right? Whereas the dwarven spaceships would be cold iron
or stone.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, no,
or even stone spaceships. You're exactly right. Yeah.
The race in Wild Cards, they were living beings. They inhabited. They genetically modified, but they were living creatures, and they kind of shaped them. And the weird thing was, it was their wars and battles were very space opera-ish.
Yeah.
Because discharging, firearms inside of a living creature is just a bad idea, especially when that living creature is between you and space.
Yeah. And then finally, you would have planets that would be a mix, right? So you would have a planet where maybe humans, elves, and dwarves all live here, and they live in peace, and because they have the best of all three, they're really powerful merchants, or they're guilds, or any of those different concepts. So I think that would be my futurized version of Dungeons and Dragons. But I'm really excited about just Earthdawn linking with Shadowrun,
the concept,
and the idea of the through line. And so I highly suggest these books, and I highly suggest to all the third-party publishers out there, especially now that the OGL's unlocked. I would love to see what their version of futuristic Dungeons and Dragons looks like.
I'm sure we're going to see it. It's coming.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, it won't be long.
We got a little glimpse from Louis Porter Jr. when he just put out his Machine Smith.
Yeah,
we also got the tiny bit of the modern magic, which we got to experience in the Nerdarchy Saves the World.
Yeah,
there's that as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, what do you guys think about a futuristic D&D world? What would it look like with science and magic being in the same spot? Put your thoughts and comments down below. While you're at it, like, share, even subscribe.
Follow us on Instagram.
So until next time,
Stay nerdy.